Games Workshop strongly appear to be liars, because when Games Workshop's official account on Twitter said, "Since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians. The custodians are these gold chappies, by the way," well, that's just a flat out lie from them. It appears to contradict their own law going all the way back to 1987. Their own company referred to these guys as being men in their own literature, so either the person running that account doesn't care about their own IP, or they're deliberately lying. When they finally became an army years later, as far as I can find around 2014 or so, they were still all men. You don't have to take my word for it. This is page 14 of the 8th edition book on them, and I went and found it myself. I'll put a link to the PDF below. You haven't got to believe me. It's this part here where it says, "It is known that all custodians begin their lives as the infant sons of the noble houses of terror. They are, as far as I can tell, and have always been all men." So now, for whatever reasons, Games Workshop decide that they want female custodians in their game. Okay, I'm not that bothered. I don't even play your game. Wasn't going to buy them anyway, but don't just come out and try to tell me that they've always had women among them, because I don't like people trying to gaslight me and lie to my face. I'm not sure what to make of all this, because this is how they introduce the concept of female custodians. And what the hell is even that? What is the point of having female custodians if they're going to be in no way feminine anyway? She has a bigger jaw than most of the guys in 40k. Is her dad supposed to be Robert Zadar? She looks like 3 times World's Strongest Man Bill Kazmaier. Who greenlit this? Who greenlit any of this? Maybe the mostly male fanbase of your game would have been more accepting of the change if the female custodian had looked like the actress Jessica Lucas. She kind of looks to me like she could have been genetically engineered for hotness. Maybe give her good stats and your players may have accepted the change more. Aside from the fact that it's just so sodding lazy as writing that it beggars belief. The whole thing comes off to me as just downright insulting. They could have at least written an in-universe reason for the change in the retcon. Maybe the custodians could lose a load of people in battle and badly be in need of new recruits. And the scientists just so happen to have come up with a new method, so women can now be made into custodians. Give me something. Don't just try to lie to my face. Maybe blame the character Belisarius Cawl. He seems to be Games Workshop's go-to when they want to do really lazy writing. He's like the Force in Star Wars. It also depends on why it's being done. Is it being done due to a genuine effort to improve the story and move it forward? Are there sound business reasons for doing it? Or is it being done for purely political reasons?
Put this stuff up to your higher-ups, and if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them. I say that all out as a joke, but it's actually very, very true because...
Is it just that Games Workshop made the fatal mistake of letting activists get inside their company? Because activists strongly appear to be a pox on free expression and art, coming with an ever-increasing list of demands on what art has to be. Most of my favourite films would not pass these criteria at Amazon Studios. Aliens, which is a pretty feminist movie, would not pass these criteria. And there are a lot more criteria than that at Amazon Studios. That's just a summary. The full version is many pages long. But maybe if I were Games Workshop, I'd want to retcon stuff too. If, during the 80s, I'd tried to introduce pygmies into my model lineup. I mean, how do you ever live that one down? They look like the character Steamboat from early Captain Marvel comics. They're not exactly in tune with the sensibilities of 2025. So there you go, people saying Warhammer needs to change. Turns out Warhammer has always had plenty of diversity. Are you happy now? Maybe they should bring the pygmies back. And this all makes me kind of suspicious. This makes me think that either the company thinks all publicity is good publicity and they were intentionally trying to annoy people for free advertising, or perhaps someone is trying to tank the company's share price so they can then buy it up for less. And in a past video it seemed to me that it was like someone was intentionally trying to destroy the IP. But what I described doesn't seem good enough either. For some reason, they don't just have to change it so women are custodians now. They had to make it a change so women have always been custodians, which is oddly similar to what happened with Doctor Who being retconned so the Doctor started out as a young black girl. It's weird, it's like poetry, it rhymes. And Warhammer 40k doesn't stand alone in this. This seems to be part of a much larger pattern. One after another, properties once beloved of many are getting totaled. This exact sort of casual disregard for their own story, this exact MO, seems to be a major contributor to why Doctor Who now has a fraction of the audience it had just a handful of years ago. The audience for the Netflix Witcher has in large part run for the hills. The audience for Lord of the Rings of Power have evacuated the show like it's the Titanic post-iceberg. Somehow Disney Lucasfilm have taken the MCU, Indiana Jones and Star Wars and turned them into radioactive franchises that can somehow lose money. Dungeons and Dragons, Battletech, Magic the Gathering, take your pick. At this point, nothing seems safe, and the more worrying part is that this may just be a symptom of a far larger malady. The adage is never put down to malice what can be explained by incompetence, but how many times does this have to happen in a row before the required level of incompetence for it to make any kind of sense is just too high to be plausible? And this all reminded me of an interview I'd watched recently on YouTube from ex-KGB Soviet defector Yuri Bezmenov from way back in 1984 of all years, and in this interview he detailed Soviet plans that he took part in before his defection to subvert and destroy Western culture from within. Starting in the media and universities, journalists, academics and students would be systematically taught to hate their own country and culture, to destroy their own culture on behalf of the Soviets.
It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages.
And it wouldn't even need direct collusion. All you need to do is indoctrinate the right people, wind them up and watch them go. In this interview, Bezmenov claims 85% of the KGB's efforts went into cultural subversion, getting young people to hate their own flag and nation and instead embrace the Soviet system, to make the population so demoralised that they not even want to fight off the Soviets when they finally came. And how do you do that? Well, culture is kind of the glue that binds a society together. I'd strongly advise everybody to watch this interview because, well, it seems to fit worryingly well with a lot of the events you can turn on the news and see. You don't have to go far to see evidence of both interference in Western democracies as well as signs of societal breakdown. But don't worry about any of that, because I was assured by someone in my comment section of my last video that, quote, no one is trying to get rid of Western culture. So keep that in mind.
No Trump, no war, no USA at all. No Trump, no war, no USA at all.
Oh, that was from a May Day march in Washington DC in America of young, mostly college students, also members of the Democratic Socialists of America, someone holding a hammer and sickle flag there. I'm sure there's nothing in it. Don't worry, clearly no one is trying to get rid of Western culture. Also, ignore that a lot of the calls for these changes to Warhammer are coming from here. A subreddit called Sig Marxism, with a straight up picture of the creator of Marxism, Karl Marx. That's who that is, right there on the banner. Forget it. Nobody's trying to destroy Western culture. Oh, that. If you're wondering about that, that's the slogan of the Houthi movement in Yemen. It's only 5 lines, but you may want to pay attention to line 2 there, right after God is the greatest. Line 2 there. I mean, it's not a very long list. Just read the 5 mission statements of the group there, and I think you'll get the general gist of what they're all about. Don't worry though, clearly, nobody's trying to destroy Western culture. This post on YouTube told me so. That slogan, by the way, is derived from a common slogan apparently used in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Pakistan, supposedly originally North Korea during the Korean Civil War, when the communist-backed North attempted a takeover of the country, resulting in a war, and the main exports for the more Western South Korea are now tech, attractive pop stars and Korean barbecue, whereas the exports for the communist-backed North mostly seem to be nuclear threats, human misery, and people running away from a country whose definition of freedom is men being able to choose from any one of the 10 government-approved haircuts. At least if Time magazine has it right. It's all fine though, nothing to see here. Clearly nobody has any bad intentions towards the West.
Yes, that's fire. That's so fire. Oh my god. Dude, we think the Houthis, Ansar Allah, is doing what Luffy would do.
Oh, that was popular Turkish-American live streamer Hasan Piker giving a tongue bath to a Houthi pirate. Do you remember the Houthi slogan from earlier? Remember line 2 there? That's Hasan Piker, who's still being given a megaphone by Twitch. But no, clearly nobody is trying to destroy Western culture.
Остров столь мал, что лишь одной ракеты «Сармат» достаточно, чтобы его утопить раз и навсегда. Российской ракете «Сармат» самой мощной Борис, а Англии нет. Раз и навсегда. Зачем заигрываться? Другой вариант – погрузить Британию в морскую пучину в метровой глубине со скоростью 200 км в час. Нет никакого способа остановить этот подвод 500 метров. Такой водяной шквал является еще и носителем экстремальных доз радиации. Пройдя над Британскими островами, он превратит то, что...
Oh, that was a clip taken from the propaganda on Russian state-run TV, on a channel called Russian Media Monitor on YouTube. There, this gentleman's talking about submerging the UK under a radioactive tidal wave using a nuclear torpedo.
China's invasion of their neighbors.
You call Crimea? I call it a part of Russian territory, bitch. That's what I call Crimea. I call it Crimea River.
That was the anti-imperialist Hasan Piker defending the Russian annexation of Crimea.
Explain to you 2 principles that you should keep with you, coming from a person who's Turkish, okay? When you look at a situation in the Middle East, you look at what the local government is and who the Western forces are. Never align with the Western forces.
I understand he's a very rich socialist now. I wonder where he gets all his money from. You know, in retrospect, I'm starting to think Yuri may have had a point. And what happens after a takeover, you may ask? Well, according to Yuri, what happens to the people the KGB of his time lovingly called useful idiots? These people who could be made to tear apart their own culture and country.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt.
Oh my, what an interesting choice of words Yuri uses at the end there. So for the Democratic Socialists of America, be careful what you wish for. One day you just may get it.
If you only knew the power of one, the power of two, the power of many.